Hey everyone, and welcome back to Ontario Cryptids. I hope you all are doing well and had a great week. Today I have 3 encounter stories to share with you all, so let's get started. If you've been enjoying the content, why not take a quick second to hit that subscribe button? By subscribing, you'll never miss out on the latest episode, and you'll be joining a community of like-minded individuals who share your interests. Let's keep this journey going together. Thank you for your support. If you have an encounter story that you would like to share, then please forward your stories to OntarioCryptids@gmail.com. I would be honored to share your story with like-minded people. Now sit back and relax as we begin with today's episode. This first one occurs December 2009. We're going to be heading to Clay County, Florida, and the nearest town is Middleburg. I was out hunting a small game in Camp Blandon on the Still Hunt side close to the cemetery road. I had a friend of mine about 150 yards to my right and about 30 to 40 yards in front. I saw something running between us going from my right to in front of me. It was between the two of us. It stopped about 50 to 60 yards in front of me and then turned and looked at me. I stood looking, trying to figure out what I was seeing for maybe 30 seconds. And then I got down on one knee and I watched it for about 45 seconds. It turned to its right, my left, and was gone. It was dark brown, almost black, running kind of like an old man that had a back problem. Bent over a little at the waist. It was on 2 legs, not 4, as all other animals in the woods have. I could see the arms moving as it ran, just as if a man would when he is running. I'm 6 foot tall. I walked to the spot, I saw it, and looking at the tree, I was trying to gauge its height. From what I could tell, it stood about 7 foot tall. I looked for any tracks and found none, as it was a swamp. Nothing but water, but could see evidence that something was there from the way the grass and the water was laid over. I called to my friend and asked if he saw anything. He said no. We both started walking, hunting more. All the while I was thinking about what I saw. We walked approximately half a mile from where I saw whatever it was, and he saw a very large pile of feces on the ground. We both looked at it for a while, poking at it with sticks, trying to figure out what kind of animal it could have come from. We both have hunted for over 35 years each and have never seen anything like this. We saw a lot of grassy material and a lot of berries in it. No hair, bones, or anything that you would see from most carnivores in the woods. This next one takes place November 5th of 1994. We're going to be heading to Pendleton County, West Virginia. The nearest town is Durban. On November 5th of 1994, myself and 6 other cavers got together to do some ridge walking and camping along several miles of limestone exposed on the east side of Seneca Creek, in the Seneca Creek back country. This is a remote and heavily forested section of the Monongahela National Forest and lies on the western flanks of Spruce Knob, the highest point in West Virginia. We planned a through hike, so I pre-positioned my vehicle downstream at the public parking area near the intersection of White's Run and Seneca Creek. Then we drove around and upstream to the blank trailhead, where we started out. Hiking along or off the side of the trail, we passed the entrances of a few caves that were located on previous trips. We've been working this area for a few months already. The area is heavily forested with second-growth hardwoods that have grown up since the virgin timber was clear-cut in the 1890s to 1912 logging era. We worked our way north towards and through a region known for a series of large open meadows in the forest left behind by homesteaders in the early part of the 1900s. We eventually found a number of small caves in that area, but none large enough that we could easily enter them. Most would require some digging. About halfway through these meadows, we left the trail completely as it wandered up the mountain and away from the limestone. We continued north and across the last of the meadows, then into the trees. We crossed a couple more ravines and finally, at the end of the day, found a nice flat bench on a remote ridge to set up our camp. We were 6 or 7 miles in from the trailhead and still had 5 miles to go before reaching my SUV at White's Run. It was 4 miles or so as the crow flies to the nearest houses on the far side of the big mountain. We were about as remote as you can get in that area. That night we built a small fire and set up to about 11 p.m. talking. The night was dark, clear skies, but the moon had set and not much starlight in the thick forest. We all backpacked light, so our source of light were no more than our headlamps and a firelight. The camp was dim. It was around 10:30 when we just finished telling something of a spooky story. Everyone was a little keyed up, I guess. About 30 seconds after I finished the story, a single scream rang out from the woods behind me. It sounded to be 200 yards more north across the next ravine and on the next ridge we would head for the following morning. It was loud, but not incredibly so. It was unlike any cry I'd ever heard in the woods, and didn't sound like a bird call to me. More like a mammal, reminiscent of a woman's scream, but nothing like a cat scream. It started low and rose in scale, lasting about 3 to 4 seconds. It really caught our attention since we were all on edge from the story I told. It caused a bit of nervous laughter and discussion, and some of us decided it must have been some kind of screech owl. I've bought land in that area since then, and I hear screech owls all the time. They sound nothing like that scream. We never heard it again, and by 11 p.m. we were all sacked out. The next morning we got up and decided that we had ridge walked enough. It was Sunday, and we all had 5 miles of rough terrain to hike before getting to the car, then a long drive home. So we never visited the area from where this sound came from. Instead, we dropped down off our ridge to a trail following Seneca Creek and back to my car. I've not been back to that particular spot since, and would never have thought much more about it. But the event has stuck in my mind for 14 years. When I found a BFRO website this year, read the reports about screams in the night, and then noted how many sightings were occurring within a 10-mile radius of this area, I thought it might be worthwhile mentioning. Certainly not a strong report, but possibly more evidence in the growing collection for that region of Pembledon County. This last one takes place on October 12, 2020. We're going to be heading to Jackson County, Illinois, and the nearest town is Makanda. Me, my wife, and another hiking buddy, a female, just hiked 7 miles from the entrance of Red Cedar Trail at Giant City State Park to the primitive campsite where we set up our sleeping arrangements. My wife set her tent against the northwest part of the site. I was sleeping in a hammock and cocoon with a hammock tarp as my shelter southwest of her. My friend was also in a hammock tarp southeast of my wife's tent. After setting up our sleeping arrangements, we started a fire with some fell wood that we found laying around the site. Once the fire was going good, we sat down and reconstituted some dehydrated food that we hiked in. We drank tea and ate until our bellies were full. Afterwards, me and my wife went to bed, while my friend stayed up and played on her phone. After a few minutes, she went to bed as well. To be perfectly transparent, I want to share a detail which may be of use to critics, but I know better as it relates to my story. Where I had my hammock Walnuts occasionally fell from the tree and hit my tarp and rolled off onto the campsite grounds. This was a common event and one I'm used to hearing as an avid hiker. I'm no novice to the forest sounds and behaviors. The night progressed and the fire burnt out. I remember poking my head out of the cocoon and looking at the fire to see how dim it was becoming. Because the campsite was so remote, I knew it would soon be pitch black. I remember a walnut falling from the tree and striking my tarp. It rolled off into the darkness and found its resting spot. The fire grew dimmer and dimmer until I grew bored of watching it. I zipped myself within my cocoon and fell asleep. Sometime later, a loud thud woke me from my sleep. Maybe another walnut, I thought. Only it wasn't. It couldn't have been. Nothing ever hit the ground. Nothing rolled away off of the tarp. My heart raced. Like I said before, I'm an avid hiker-camper, and I always look out of my hammock and under my tarp to see what's in the cap, but this time was different. I froze and couldn't move. It was like an involuntary fear that I've rarely experienced. I stayed that way until I calmed down, but never mustered the courage to look outside of my cocoon. The next morning, the first thing my wife tells me was that a bipedal creature was walking around outside of her tent last night. My friend said, "Mine too." I tell them, "Something slapped my shelter." I go on to explain that it wasn't a walnut that fell on my tarp because it never hit the ground. My wife then tells the both of us that she heard 2 howls several minutes later and that they were about 15 minutes apart. According to her, the howl sounds like a sigh that paused at a very high pitch, then broke into 2 small howls, then paused, and 2 more small howls. That repeated itself another time. Me and my friend did not hear that, likely because we had fallen back asleep. We left that campsite knowing that we had an unexplainable experience. Although my friend is hesitant to believe that it was the big guy, she does not deny that something with 2 legs was walking around her that night. As for me, I remain convinced that something slapped my tarp. My wife believes it was because I was a man, while her and my friend were female. Regardless, something with 2 legs entered our camp in the dead of night, in pitch blackness, and left us unharmed, but fearful to look outside. We all shared that sense of fear and dread that we felt but left the park not seeing the big guy, but at least 2 of us believing we were in close proximity to it. I hope you all enjoyed these encounter stories today. I have to say the last one reminded me of another encounter that I've told before. It was Rich's encounter he had while he was solo canoeing and camping, also in a hammock and tarp situation. I found it funny how it slapped this guy's tent, but then just walked around the ladies. A very interesting encounter indeed. Okay, it's time for us to acknowledge the current OC members. I would like to thank Elizabeth, Jim, Diana, and Teresa for their contributions and support as members of the OC community. Thank you for all you do. If you wish to learn more about the OC membership program, you can check out the membership video to get a detailed description of all the perks you will receive. Don't miss out on the adventure. Become a member and join us today. If these encounter stories remind you of one that you may have had, then please forward your encounters to OntarioCryptids@gmail.com. I would be honored to share your story on this channel. Thank you for listening until the end. I truly appreciate it. Please hit the like button on your way out and smash the subscribe button if you're new to my channel. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you all next week right here on Ontario Cryptids.